So, hello everyone, this is OK here, and this is part 2 of a recap of Season 6 of the Crazyhouse League. So last time we did chapters 1 to 20 of this study. It's a double study, and I'll post the links with the video, and I'll also post it on YouTube. And today we're going to be looking at puzzles from the remainder of the Crazyhouse League. So it'll be part 2 of a video from a couple of weeks back. This is actually a position we saw last time, or a variation from a position we saw last time. So it's white to play and mate in this position. And as people are joining us, I'll just wait a couple of seconds for people to think about this position. Okay, so we only have a bishop in hand, and it looks like the king has evaded our checkmate. And there's nothing we need to be too worried about at home in terms of there are no checks. The checks are all covered. So we could even just do a slow move, as it were. But there is a very forcing mate in this position. So I'm just going to leave that as a puzzle for about 10 seconds and then begin the stream. And see if anyone has joined us. So people have loaded in. Yeah, people are. Takes some time sometimes for notifications to go through that a stream has started. So I can see that Lichess is now noticed that I'm streaming, but people are still coming in, I think. Okay, well, I'm going to begin, but hopefully people join soon. Okay, so it's actually a queen sack. A lot of squares are controlled by this bishop, and we can finish it off like so. How many squares do we need to cover? We need to cover these squares, and then there's nowhere else, and here, and then there's nowhere else for the king to go. So clearly, if the king does step back, we need to be aware that we need to stop this king run. And we have a bishop in hand, and so that's very easy how to do it. Whenever the king ever steps to b6, we're going to just put a bishop on and just stop that whole idea. So we can just take that out, and so we can rule out that possibility. If ever he steps to b6, that square is covered. Sorry. So he only has 2 squares left, and we have 1 pawn. Oh, but this bishop on b6 would also be covering this square here. So if he steps to here, we also put a bishop on c7, and with that kind of calculation we can see that the king is mated. So we use our pawn for c6 and our bishop on c7, and whenever the king goes to one of those squares, so that's the sense in which I'm marking the square. If the king goes here, we're going to use a pawn. If the king goes to b6 or b8, we're going to use a bishop. So just to play out the line, king b6, bishop c7. So it covers the king's escape, and then at c6. And it's quite beautiful how the 2 bishops and the 2 pawns work together in this position. It suddenly occurred to me, maybe 7 AM on a Sunday morning wasn't the best time for a stream. The alternative was 2 AM this morning, and I figured 7 AM might be better, but we'll see. That does explain a lot, the silence. Well, anyway, let's get going. So we have two knights in hand. This is what we showed last time, and it was this mate takes the queen, and the A rook taking just gives the king more space. So if this rook takes, we have this beautiful mate with queen at c6 that we just showed. If the rook takes this way, we have this mate, which also works in the other case with the other rook takes. If the king goes back, it's just checkmate in one, so the king has to run forward. And in this position, it looks like we don't have enough diagonals, because we need a bishop to draw the king out, a queen to push the king back, and then we need a final pawn for checkmate. And the beautiful thing is, we get that pawn by, instead of checking with the queen first, we check with the pawn, and then lay the queen down. So there's a little bit of a moon mate theme, and the moon theme is you lay down one of your pieces to be taken, just to leave it as ammunition, an ammo dump that you can then pick up later. So you're giving away free material just to create an ammo dump that you're going to pick up later. And that means you could just now drop a pawn on a5 or c5 with checkmate. Okay, so that we did do that last time. So now the stream starts proper here, as it were. So chapter 21. This was F Gala against Colwem. Colwem was black, and he's hunting for a mate. Now some of these I'm going to leave as puzzles, and some of them I'm going to just run through the variations and share them. And it depends also on whether we get people in chat who are able to chip in and contribute to try and solve the puzzles. So this one, I think I'm going to just run through some of these lines. I won't make it a puzzle. So Colwyn played the correct first move. I mean, there may be many correct first moves, but he played a good first move. It is in fact mate in 6, as you can see in the analysis. And F Gala blocked. He took the piece, which was also good. And the struggle he had at this point is this bishop is covering all the knight checks. But black has two knights, so that bishop is... So clearly the technique for mating here is to recognize that that bishop is overloaded. So although it's covering all the knight checks, we can deflect it one way and then check the other way. And then it's a question of, do we want to check here and then second knight here, something like this? Or do we want to check on h3 and then, once we've deflected the bishop, use one of these two squares? So, yeah. Okay, so the analysis shows which is better. So what? But there's still a problem. Why is one better than the other? So let's just play through the lines. So knight h3, and then maybe we'll draw some conclusions afterwards. So knight h3. The reason why you take it is because if the king were to just move or to run, queen at g1 makes a lot of sense. If king takes, knight at g5 is checkmate, and if the king runs the other way, then it's trying to escape this way, so quite a nice way of finishing it off is you just block off the escape and then go knight g5. Is that not correct? Yes, that's also checkmate. In fact, any check is checkmate in this position, so even like... So after the block, as you can see here, any check will mate. So knight here check, pawn here check, anything will mate. Quite a lot of mates in ones. Okay, so king can't run that way. Could it run this way? So again, a very nice thing you can do is you can block off this square. And the point is, once that's blocked, then it becomes a back rank mate on g1. So you can't block. If you run this way, we have the same line we saw earlier: queen here, king here, knight here, checkmate. And if you run this way, then he's trying to go here. So, well, we again have a mate just by going here, here, and now the king actually has no other squares. The bishop is covering the second rank, the pawn is covering the third rank, so a knight is going to checkmate. Okay, but that's all saying why white really does have to take that knight. And then check here. The point is, if he ever goes to f1, if he goes to h1, it's just mate in 1, queen at g1. If he goes to f1, we can use the same trick of covering. In fact, we don't need to use the same trick of covering, because we have this, queen at e1, king g2, and bishop here is checkmate. What I was saying is much more long-winded, but queen at f1, and then king takes here, and then we just need any check to mate, I believe. So this will work. Okay, so that's why he doesn't go to f1 or h1. So he'd has to go to g2, and then, well, we can bring our other knight in, and that protects our knight, and then that drives him back to f1 anyway, and so he's mated in 1, like so. So it just turned out that putting the knight on h3 first turned out to be a lot stronger. Just because maybe it's because the other knight can come and support here more easily. So if you go knight at f3, bishop at f3, and knight here. No, still no. So the move is actually king f1. So if king g2 here, the fact that we can't bring this knight in is not a problem, because we've just got queen at g1. The king has been run forwards. Okay, so it's not so obvious. Bishop at f5. And so why can't he just block? The problem is this square. So block with a knight. So the problem is takes bishop here would be checkmate, but taking with a knight is no better. We're just picking up. So it's quite a subtle reason. We're picking up material, which is going to mate that king. But the problem here is king f1, and if we do the usual thing of bishop at d3, he actually has king e1, and we don't have the mate here. And if we go to queen f1 as before, we're actually a knight. We don't have our second knight. So that was the power of having the second knight on f3. It covers the run to e2. Okay, now having said that, the move that happened in the game, knight at e2, is also mating. But after king f1, which is what was played in the game, so after bishop takes knight, this is actually still quite. So knight e2 is actually pretty decent. It's better than knight f3 because it stops the king running. So in this position, you can just go knight at h3 if king f1, queen g1 is mate. And if here, this is a very simple mate as well. King takes, knight. Oh, it's not so simple at all. Because the king is running to here if we put a bishop here. So we have to do something quite subtle again. So stuff like bishop f3 check, double check here, and this checkmate. So quite pretty, but slightly subtle. Or else go bishop here and then pick up another piece. Takes, for example, bishop at g4 takes, and bishop at g2 is an example. And so the effect is you've blocked off the g4 square. That was the point of this check on f5 is actually a blocking check or a picking up piece check. So takes, and knight at g5. So yeah, so it turns out the knight at h3 is slightly stronger. a slightly more efficient mate. After this, king f1 makes the mate rather challenging. Because the point is that after queen here, king takes, and we're slightly running out of pieces. We can still mate here quite, but if we go bishop at d1, that seems to be the obvious thing to do, just covering lots of squares. King's still got a couple of squares to go to, but we've only got one knight in hand. If he goes here, knight to c4, so we can cover this square, and then if he ever steps up we can go like so, but then he can step up, and we're going to have to, so if he ever steps up we can go e4, king to d4, e5. So stepping up is not going to work, but stepping back isn't going to work either actually, because now we have a back rank configuration. So notice how we control the squares in front of the king. Do we? Yes, because we can go like so. No, we can't. Okay, we have to be quite subtle here. No, we do need to do this so that we actually do control everything. Yeah. So the problem with what I was saying a second ago is then he can block here. And I thought you could just take it and drop, but that doesn't work. So bishop at d1, we can't just take bishop takes and drop the bishop here, which is, I was miscalculating, because the knight actually defends that check. So easy to make that kind of mistake. Notice if he blocks with a knight, then it's just going to be checkmate. So we're controlling those squares, and then it's checkmate. And if he blocks with a rook, then takes rook, bishop takes is also a problem, because that we wanted to mate on c2, but that doesn't work. So if he blocks with a rook, it's also quite tricky. Okay, so we're going back to this. So just queen at g1 seems like we're losing material. Queen at d1 might be another idea, but it's just not clear. The bishop is kind of doing a great job defending against the checks. So there is still a mate in this position, but it's bishop at g2. And the point is, if you take on g2, it's not obvious. I'm thinking queen at g1, but then the king is running. So we need to somehow stop the king running. And the move is this, because if king takes, we have queen at e4 checkmate. And if the king doesn't take, we've successfully blocked off this whole escape route, and things are going to be very simple. So queen at g1 here, and bring this knight in. We have a nice configuration where the knights are covering all the squares on the h-file. So bishop at g2, very nice move in this position. So that bishop can't be taken, or f3, and we mate. So he goes the other way and takes the knight. And then what? So we could go f3 and trade all, which is not very aesthetic, but it works. There's also a way of going queen at c2, apparently, and you block. Why would we go f3? So I mean, we can see the engine is saying f3, but what's the idea of f3? f3, bishop takes f3. I mean, of course, he has to take it, because if he just goes here, knight here is checkmate. But what? Knight f4, knight to f4, and of course the knight can't be taken because the bishop is pinned. And we use the new knight. Oh, I see. So if king e3, queen to d3, and if king to e1, we use the new knight on d3, and it's checkmate. Okay, this is really tricky. To be honest, probably much easier would just be go queen to g1, but queen to g1 takes, bishop at d1, king to d3, e4 check. So we've seen he can't step forward, so he has to step back. Maybe this is probably the easiest way of doing it. Bishop takes g4. This is like staying safe the whole time. we've taken away this defender, and then we're controlling the back rank. And so we just take everything, the line I showed earlier. So that would have maybe been a more natural mate in this position. So so knight h3 is brilliant, as we've just explained, because knight h3, then knight f3, and we control this square, basically. That's the reason why knight h3 is better. We can always use a bishop here to control this square, the knight controls this square, and he's got back rank issues. So it keeps the white king, on the king side. But after knight e2, this is still a very easy mate to find, or reasonable mate to find. To push the king back, and then you've got a back rank situation. Actually, you don't control this square, so I'm being slightly careless. The king can always go to this square, but then queen here is checkmate in that situation. Okay, so queen at g1 is an easier mate to find, but there is a much nicer mate with bishop at a quicker mate with bishop at g2. Obviously, if king takes bishop or king takes knight, f3 is a key idea to block off the f3 square. If king takes knight, yeah, f3 immediately works. I think the most pretty version though is queen at c2 first, and then yeah, this knight moving into f4 check. If here, oh, that's more subtle, because then the queen can't come in. But in that situation, we have a knight cube, which is quite pretty. The knights 3 apart control 4 squares, and the pawns defend the knights as well as controlling these 2 squares. So you can't step up, and if he steps back, then we could go like so. Rook takes d3, knight takes d3, and that's also checkmate. Okay, so that was rather long-winded, but the point is, in the initial position, Cohen got the first few moves correct for the mate, but in this tricky position where the bishop is covering all the knight checks, he found, I think he did what a lot of people would do. He found the second best knight check with knight at e2, and it did still work. With queen at g1 would be a natural continuation, but queen at g1 or bishop at g2 were the important continuations on the third move of this sequence. And it turns out knight at h3, which we'll just show in case people have just joined us, was much neater, because in this situation, if the king goes to f1, well, I was thinking about the bishop blocking off here and the knight blocking off here, which is true, but you kind of just, there's even this, which is even quicker. Which means that in this position the king has to come up, and actually then you can do a very nice move, which is bishop at h1, just drawing the king. If the king takes, queen at g1 is checkmate. Okay, so queen at g1 is still mating very, very, very easily. So queen at g1, king takes, bishop here, check, any block, and this is checkmate. So this is still checkmate, but it's a nice touch if you finish with bishop at h1, defends the knight, keeps the king in the trap, as it were, and queen at e1 to finish. So you have this construction: queen, bishop, and knight, and a very nice checkmate. Okay, so let's get back into puzzle mode, and let's see if there's anyone in chat who is willing to play some puzzles. We go on to chapter 22, Colwem against F. Gala. Oh my goodness. I'd already looked at this one just before the stream, so I've given it away. So, it's white to play. Okay, I'm just going to show the idea. Let's see Yeah, this is a Sunday morning, so it's a quiet stream, so I can understand if people are not engaging, um, or there are not many people awake. Um, so, very nice move, bishop at g5, check. So why is it nice? It stops the king running over to the queen side, and in the queen side it's not clear how to... You could put a queen down, but you need a lot more pieces to mate. So bishop at g5 is quite a nice move to keep the king in the box. And the point is, if the king runs this way, again we can go queen here, keep the king in the box, and rook here, checkmate. But then, of course, if we're going to lay down a challenge and offer your bishop for free, the question is, why can't black just take this bishop? And in this position, white has a mate in 2. Again, we want to make sure we don't allow the king to run over to the queen side, but in this position we can even make sure that the king doesn't run back into the king side either. So what's the move for white? Okay, and the move is queen f4, so that blocks both escape routes and this. And I think this is a swallowtail mate? And in fact you can even do it this way, queen here, blocking the 2 escape routes. And it's the same. Now I think is that a swallowtail mate? I think that's a swallowtail mate, where both the squares the king would like to run back to are defended. Okay, next one. Mohar 369 against Darubaru. So this is actually going to be a quick commentary on this game. So Darubaru was black, and I'm looking at this one from Darubaru's perspective. Because maybe there's some comments on some of the moves. Okay, so e4, b6, so definitely evading any theoretical lines. Not the theory of much importance until you really reach 2200 or so, I'd say. Castles, okay. So, just a comment here. Black has developed fairly slowly, so okay. So I'm going to turn the yeah, I'm going to take off this so you can read some of my the comments that I'll be reading out. So white actually does have knight g5 and just a fast attack on f7 apparently in this position, because black hasn't developed too much. So if black continues normal developing moves, you can even go knight takes f7, king takes f7, and at f5, and just put pressure on e6. And just keep on attacking on the light squares in this position. So this is one aspect in chess, in Crazyhouse, which is slightly different from chess, is that you can attack, is that you keep on getting more and more pieces to attack on a color complex. So if you can keep on exchanging pieces along a color complex, you can work your way into the opponent position with 0 risk to your own position. So as I said here, white would just keep putting diagonals along light squares to make a chain in this position. So you just go takes, and keep on pushing, put pawns, just keep on putting pieces on the light squares, and this would be the only square left for the king once you've got a pawn yourself on e6. And then we'd be looking to undermine this knight and come in with our own knight to defend this square. So that's why this sort of move doesn't work. If you develop with the bishop, okay, similar idea, takes, but then you'd even have queen h5 check, block, queen f5 exploiting the pin, king to e8, at f7 check, king f8, promote to queen takes e6 check here, and queen f7 checkmate. So just a very natural move like bishop e7. We can see how it could be falling very quickly. So knight g5 is definitely a so maybe that wasn't the critical mistake. That was just a sample line. So let's see, what was the critical mistake for white here? For black here, the critical mistake was actually king f8. So even though this threatens mate, apparently there are, I can't see how to defend this, but apparently there are defenses in this position. Knight at h6, apparently being 1. So usually that would not be a good idea because this bishop takes knight, but at least you're taking back with the knight, defending this square. But this is extremely unpleasant. So it's even saying just sack the queen and I was thinking put a knight on f7 or something. But so this is actually very pretty. White has this idea. So the bishop controls all the light squares. So we just need to control the dark squares, and we can do that with knights. Knight at h5. So if we step back, it's going to be at g7, taking this. And it's all going to be over very soon. So just to show you the line here, check, king e8, check, and what do? We can't sort of clear a hole very easily. If you do this, defends the bishop, he tries to run away, rook at f7. It's the problem, and there's nothing else really in the position. But if we step up, that's no better, because we can put a new knight on f4, and suddenly the king can't even come back, has to keep running forwards, and this will be checkmate. So yeah, a very fast attack on f7 is sometimes something you have to watch out for in Crazyhouse. In the game, white just played very normally with castles, knight g to f6. Now white is clearly better, because white's development is good, he's got a control of the center. Just like in chess, white would be better. But in Crazyhouse, it means he can attack first, and yeah, his king is very safe, and so yeah, this is quite a difficult position for black already. So d5 was played here. He could have just castled. I mean, given up the piece like so, and at least then his development situation is fixed. Bishop at g5, maybe a counterattack here, or maybe just bishop at d7 to defend. So probably that would have been slightly stronger, but he went for this, and the problem with that is this. Yeah, you can't really afford to take here because this is too strong. So has to take back, takes. Yeah. Bishop b5 check would have been slightly stronger with tempo. But yeah, so white's just won a piece. Bishop d3, it loses a tempo and it also loses a piece because it falls to this fork. So bishop b5 check. It's a nice idea to free the bishop with tempo, but c6, as in chess, you are now still attacking two pieces. Bishop takes pawn, bishop takes bishop, and then free the knight. And so that was quite a clever way from white in that position to at least get a pawn for his piece, although he could have also just backed off and got a pawn with bishop e2 takes pawn. But not just getting a pawn, but also keeping initiative. So he moved his pieces forward. So in this position, he could have just gone here, takes, and this is like plus 3. So what white did here was quite smart in a way. Is he takes, but he's now got a counter threat on black. A very powerful knight as well. On the flip side, black does have quite a nice pawn to start an attack, adding a piece on f3 at some point. Okay, so bishop at d7 was played, knight at d6. a very good destabilizing move. So you put a bishop on d7, you've unprotected d6. Well, I'm going to check you means you can never castle. You can never get safe on g8. And um, secondly, it's a double attack on f7. And so the question now is, which I asked in the comments, is this knight is a great knight. It's protected. It's a central knight. It's stable, and this knight is unstable. So which knight do you use to capture on f7? And I would argue you definitely use the d knight, just for the reason it's an unstable knight anyway. But Mohar captured with the other knight, queen to c7 at e5, and he stabilizes then the unstable knight. But of course that means he didn't get to pick up the rook. So that was the reason why the other knight would have been stronger. But this is still very good. Knight e8. So this is making a sort of fundamental mistake. When you're being attacked, you don't want to exchange pieces. It's you should be conserving your own material. So moving this rook, defending your king, for example. Defending your position, conserving material. Now this is just suicidal because Black is offering material. He's got now his rooks on pre, his knights on pre, and his king is not in a safe position. So lots of material will mean Black gets checkmated, and that's basically what happens in the game. Bishop at g5, king f8, then Black took the rook. Black takes the knight, which is his idea after all. At e7, king g8, and he takes the knight here. So why does he take the knight here? So in this position, yeah, notice in this position, what does white really need? What white really needs is a pawn for f7. Taking the knight's still pretty decent. Although the knight isn't the piece that white really needs. It's a decent move. The piece that white really needs is a pawn for f7. King takes knight would be forced. And then we have moves like rook at f8. With checkmate, takes g8 and checkmate. And here especially, knight e4 would be a fabulous move because you're both threatening knight takes queen and at f7. And basically, Black would be forced to protect the f7 threat, which is mating, and we'd have something like this, just to pick up the queen. Now we have to defend queen at f8, so you do it with the knight, you can just take it, takes back. So queen at f8, he's still trying to run away and there's still no knight checks. And here there's just a pretty mate, which is, I wouldn't do it that way. Yeah, I would do it in another way. Knight at h6 check, with the idea that if you come up, queen at g8 is checkmate. So you have to take it, and then knight at f6, and we have a classic mate. So I'd say that's a classic way of doing it. So apparently this also works. You can go. That's also quite pretty actually. So yes, this is completely dominating. So this key move to recognize what's the piece I really need in this position. It's a pawn, and then take the pawn. Take which pawn? Take the pawn that creates the most threats. Okay, so a little bit of an error from Mohar in just backing off his knight. Just what, my knight's stuck there anyway, so that's a bit of a waste of a tempo. Knight f7, you really wanted a pawn on f7. And even the king could just take this knight. There's no obvious reason why not. Okay, so Black saw desperation in his position, and played knight at h3, but this move is just giving away another knight, which is giving white even more material to attack. And now it's just, now there was a mouse slip because obviously knight at e5 was intended, which is a strong move. This was played. Now, luckily for white, he still has another knight for e5, and he plays it correctly this time. And this position was so bad that even with the mouse slip, white was winning. But how to finish it off? again, we really need a pawn for f7. So the move is knight takes e4, and that gives us the pawn for f7. So just to show you the line, knight takes e4, we could take it, pawn f7, takes, and the rook mates. We have back rank mate. Okay, so instead, white played rook at g3, so maybe he was slightly concerned with defense. But if you want to defend, probably the best defense was, I was saying, it does defend, nothing like pawn on g2 to defend g2. So it does defend, but a pawn on g2 would be a lot stronger defense. The problem with this, so meaning even if you did knight takes e4, takes, and pawn at g2, this seems like ridiculously overprotective. Yeah, and apparently that's not so good. So you're giving knight. What does black do here? Well, now white no longer has a pawn for f7, so white isn't doing so badly, apparently. I mean, black isn't doing so badly, which is surprising. But apparently the key move here, and this is, I wasn't planning on showing you this stuff, is knight d6, trying to undermine the bishop and then clear out this, and then we don't have back rank issues. And we can't just back off, because probably just dump a pawn on g5, and we sort our issues out. And so then in this position, if this had happened, white suddenly has to attack very, very fast to make something happen in this position. So bishop d8 takes, and if just knight takes rook, then that's not good. You're giving maybe you're giving white a little bit too much material. So this would be a kind of line. Maybe you go for this, but g takes h3 because f3 is covered already. So black still has a lot to attack with, so that's why you have to be careful of these sorts of attacks. King takes at g2, king takes, and in this situation you'd be in danger because of knight f4 and takes h3 ideas. In fact, as you can see in the analysis, it's mate in 7. So a very important move for white here is actually just a sidestep, and if it takes here, again, king takes is dangerous because then you get another pawn at g2. So queen takes is important. Queen is then offering protection to the king. So there could be some difficulties that white could easily run into. So it's interesting. So white is completely winning, but you still need to find slightly accurate moves to after the mouse flip, that is. So taking this pawn and going pawn at f7 is something completely crushing. Attacking on the back rank is something completely crushing, rook at d8. Even bringing the queen in is something completely crushing. But rook at g3, rook takes. So yeah, I was saying black probably should have tried to defend here, I said, with pawn at f7, but or bishop at g6, sort of which is suggesting, but this is interesting, going straight in. Again, are these trades benefiting white or black? Now white has a pawn, so it's rather concerning. At bishop d4, this is no good. Now finally, that pawn is in Mohar's hand as white, and the end is coming. So after king h8, let me think. King h8. I was saying rook at g8 is mating for you in the comments, but white doesn't have a rook, so I'm just going to delete that. I'm not quite sure what I meant there. But you can indeed go. What I think I meant is that you can indeed just promote, and And this, no, but the problem is he's defending this already. So knight at f7, the idea is if you have to take it, because if you just don't take it, this is checkmate. Yeah. So I think that's what I meant by rook at h8. So some kind of quite a long line. So then you have to take it, takes here, and this is actually quite this is actually very instructive. I'm going to just cover up the analysis. No, I'm not going to. Let's just keep going. There are two things you can do in this kind of position. You can either just lose that piece and continue the attack, and in fact that's the best thing to do in this position. So say rook here, king takes. I was going to go queen here, that was my instinct, but this is stronger apparently, and now I see why, because you can try and block, but then queen here is checkmate. And you can try and run, but queen here is still checkmate. So my instinct of just laying the queen down immediately is wrong, because then it gets darn tricky. You don't have any pieces in hand to continue the attack. You're still safe, but it's so apparently rook takes h7. You're threatening mate in 1, so black has no time to take your queen, and the threats are too great. But it's still tricky. I mean, you could have rook here, queen has to take, because obviously if the king takes, we're taking the queen with check. Then there's knight. Oh, there isn't knight e2 because the knight covers it. So we get white is just about safe. But yeah, very nice to bring the queen in to block the escape. So yeah, if we learn nothing else from this stream, let's learn, blocking off the king's escape route is a really powerful technique. Okay, so what actually happened in the game was white played more defensively, just taking off the bishop, takes queen h5. So he's threatening knight at g6 checkmate, knight f3, attacking, and this is very dangerous. Not taking this. So queen takes f3 is the strongest apparently. Knight takes f3 is very dangerous because we unguard. I said g2 isn't covered, but there's no check for black on g2, as he's out of pawns for f3 and knight checks are covered. But this is why that knight check was actually quite tricky, because if knight takes knight, knight checks are no longer covered. King h1, at g2, king takes. But how do we continue? Ah, we can win another knight. And is that the line? We can win another knight. And it's actually, this pawn is defended in fact, so we don't want to give away the queen. So basically king h1 is forced. And we just want a pawn for g2, but we don't have a pawn. How frustrating. So in fact the move is queen takes h2 just to get a pawn. Takes. So then just rook at g2, this is quite simple to finish. Knight here, takes, and takes. So yeah, we can sack the queen and get in. There is actually another curious mate here, which, as you can see in the analysis it's showing, which is at g3, f takes g3, just softening up that g3 square. So that's actually really interesting. So the fact that in this position, two knights mates and a rook, but also a knight, pawn, and rook also mates by just softening up this square with pawn at g3, and then we don't need the second knight. That's instructive, I think. And of course, if queen takes f3, then we're winning a queen. Can't be good. Queen here will be checkmate. So yeah, so this actually is quite tricky. So white played king h1, which is quite smart. Just recognizing g2 isn't covered. There's no check for black on g2. He's out of pawns, and the knight checks are covered. So very nice move from Mohar. At g6 was played. Knight takes g6, queen takes, and he starts promoting his queens. Knight at f7, queen takes, I mean, here there's just a kind of a fun line, which is takes, rook here, takes. But there's no need for that. We're in control. Are we in control? We're in control because at g2, king takes. The knight checks are still covered, aren't they? Let's just check. So at g2, king takes. Suppose he tried. Black does have 3 knights, which is slightly concerning. But he has no pawn, so even if he did a beautiful knight check, we can just run away. Or knight at e1 check. We can just run away. There's nothing. So yeah, those knights are very threatening, but actually black needs 2 pawns, so we can. It's a very teasing situation. So in fact that happened in the game. At g2, king takes, knight at h4, king h1. I mean, this is brilliant from Mohar, recognizing black doesn't have the pawn to finish me off. So although this is very nervous stuff, white is actually completely crushing. Knight at g3, nice try, we just take it. Knight takes bishop, and now just goes in for the sacrifice. King to f8, rook at g8. So us saying that queen here is a faster mate, because however you block, then rook at g8. So defending your piece. But okay, rook at g8. What actually happened in the game is the king went on a bit of a king run. Okay. And the thing to watch out for in this position was obvious. So yes, so nice. So I was saying nice pushing the king into your pawn army. So pushing it forwards. The one place you're worried about the king running is back to b7. So queen to b3 is really very nice, stopping that the run back. Okay, so was there a particular point I wanted to raise for black? So we saw that white missed a very fast attacking opportunity with knight g5 in the opening. Just running quickly through this game again. Basically, white won a piece, but gave the piece back, but did get some nice compensation for it. But this very nice move destabilized his king. That was so defending on d7 was a mistake because it weakened d6, and this is always a difficult position. So maybe a lot of my comments are actually for things that white could have done better. But so maybe this should really be from white's perspective. But okay, definitely don't trade along when you're trading when you have along lines of weakness is a mistake. Trading when your king is weak is a mistake. This is something definitely can be learnt. Is there any black to play moment? Probably this is the closest to defend, but actually I just realised a lot of these comments are from white's perspective, so I'm going to change around the orientation in this study to white, actually, because I think that a lot of things white could have learned, especially the knight takes e4 ideas. Knight takes e4 would have been so powerful. But rook at g3 is a bit too slow. Takes. So he finally gets the pawn he needs and begins the attack. It's quite tricky. Yeah, there's some tricky ideas, like the fact that knight takes knight uncovers knight at e2 ideas, which we saw. That was quite beautiful, in fact. That was and black is picking up another knight with check. Yeah, so we saw those very pretty ideas. And of course there are some faster mates here, but really white is in control. And I think, yeah, very nice play from white, just recognizing. I mean, just to show you an example, king g3 walks into knight t2 checkmate. So there is danger in the position for white, but very nice play. Well, okay, definitely white should have mated more efficiently in the final position. So classic construction. Queen defending that knight with check, and then a rook here. And the king, the other queen is defending here. So, but also smart dropping with the rook, so it's keeping the queen in hand for later. So that's also something instructive, actually. Often it's not a good, not always, but often you want to keep your queen for the mate. So here, if king takes pawn, queen here is checkmate. Okay, and that was something I forgot to tell you. This is a dovetail mate, so the reason why pawn here is such a nice move is that the pawn cannot be taken. You have to go here, but actually that's still checkmate. So Mohar set up this dovetail mate very beautifully, but then he didn't deliver the mate. So the queen is a great piece to keep in hand because it can deliver mate very easily. Okay. I think I'm just going to do. I think I had grand plans. I was going to cover the whole of season 6, but I think it's rather quiet today, so I might just do one more game. Mohar 369 against Darubaru. Mohar is black. Just made some comments here that, of course, what am I making comments here? Bishop f5. I was just showing that this is a standard London system. You never mind white taking on e4 because then you often take back with the pawn and you have a great attacking piece on f3. I just wanted to show that, but what actually happened in the game was slightly different, with black blocking in this light squared bishop. It's fine, it's quite defensive, the bishop ends up on d7, it's just slightly more passive. Castles, bishop to d6, knight c3, castles, knight g5, g6, and yeah, this move from Mohar, definitely something you can learn from. So this, because what this does, it does defend h7, but it really weakens the dark squares around the king. And yeah, an interesting exercise I'd say in any position in Crazyhouse is to look how many times a square is defended and how many times it's attacked. And if there are any squares which are attacked more times or an equal number of times to the number of times they're defended, that's an issue because then your opponent can place pieces on those squares. So by that logic, g7 is not an issue because the king can just take it. But h6 is an issue because it's not defended at all and it's not attacked at all. It means if ever white gets a piece, he can put it on h6. Maybe I would adjust that rule and say the king doesn't count as a defender. I mean, it does count as a defender, but if a piece being placed is defended by the king, that means the king would have to take it, and that could have the effect of drawing the king out. So one has to be always wary. So by that logic, those two squares are very weak when you play g6. In this position, it's true this was attacked twice. It was also defended twice. So this was a weak square, especially since one of the defenders is the king. So it is a sensitive square. But white doesn't have anything in hand. White doesn't even have, a queen h5 coming. So it wasn't something urgent. So g6 is going to create a long-term weakness on the dark squares, and if you are going to play g6, then I would be considering actually sacking my knight and putting a pawn on g7 in subsequent moves. That would be just a very normal thing to do. If you're going to construct g6, means you need to fix that hole as soon as possible, and that's what I say later in the game. And in fact, white played e4, d takes e4. So I was suggesting knight takes, just taking the free pawn, in fact. Yeah, there's a free pawn on offer. If takes here, plug the hole. So that would have been my approach in that position. But okay, takes here, and again, plug the hole. Maybe, but then maybe pawn here is a slight issue. So he took the knight first, and then maybe plug the hole. So the squares marked in red are really dangerous squares because they're attacked more times than they're defended. Not even an equal number of times. The blue square is an equal number of times. So this is what I say here. Blue squares are attacked an equal number of times, means he can drop pieces there and we can do nothing. So you should be concerned. But the red squares, white actually dominates them. Black is in dire straits, having such weaknesses around his king. So in fact, at g7 doesn't even work. It's got too far. Like if you play a passive move like at g7, just doesn't work because at h6, and if you take, bishop takes, it's got too bad. You can't even do defense in this position. If you try, the problem is if you try here again, takes at f6, and the point is we're losing the queen because if we back off, knight here. This is how bad things can get in Crazyhouse. If you don't defend squares around your king, so a knight and pawn can make knights and pawns can mate you. Which is why actually the best defense in this position is actually f5 because it's defending while also attacking and also just giving your king lights to recognize. Like this position is too bad. I just need to give my king some flight squares to run away. Potentially. So knight h6 would be. There's no running away then. But at least you're trying to get some kind of counterplay. You're trying to distract white from his attack. That was the point of f5. Okay, so really, you need to defend while you can. So knight takes d4 is actually seems reasonable, picking up the hanging pawn. Here, an interesting. Yeah, so I was saying that didn't work. So knight takes d4, bishop g5, and then f6. So this was, yeah, I think this is a good move from black. It's putting a piece on the contested square f6. So by doing so, black regains control of this square, and also gets a tempo on the bishop. So only h6 is an issue. So do this, and then next move we're going to go at g7. So you get a tempo on the bishop moves, and then at g7 next move. So this is really strong. Now of course, black has some very good counter moves. So at f7 is a very strong move from white, but not so easy to see necessarily. So what that does is it suddenly, if you take with the king, or you don't take it at all, f6 is suddenly weak. But if you take it with the rook, suddenly the knight at h6 becomes a strong move. You can't go to h8 because knight takes rook is picking up your queen. So you have to go to g7. He takes the rook anyway, takes back, and suddenly he's broken through on f6. So this is a real problem. So after f6, knight takes f6 was played. This is still strong. Rook takes. Knight at h6. Just king takes. He's I mean, he could have just taken the rook with check, maybe, but maybe not. So maybe he was worried that he loses the attack. Something like this. Stockfish is not convinced at the moment, but I'm thinking this is still good for white. Stockfish is concerned about counterattacks, but because the f3. Notice how f3 is now. Yeah, it's defended twice by pawn and queen and attacked twice. So f3 is a slightly sensitive square, but okay, this is still very good. White instead played this, and now this is very dangerous. Actually, this actually can be dangerous for white even, because knight h3 check, just picking up the bishop for free, is the issue. And if you take it, we still got a knight on f3, and we're picking up that bishop. King h1. Maybe you throw in at g2 just to destabilize the king, and then you take the bishop, and suddenly it's black with a huge attack, and black's completely safe. So knight g4 turned out to be a big mistake. So slightly tricky position actually. f4 apparently recommended, and the idea just to defend that weak this weak square on f3. Okay, so where did white go wrong here? He seems to be doing so well. So knight g4, a little bit of a mistake. Bishop e7. Instead, white defends. At h6, king to f8, knight takes rook, bishop takes, knight h3 check, king h1, queen takes bishop at g7. Takes. Okay, so black is in huge trouble here. This is a slight mistake, queen takes c7. Checks from a distance along files or rows that aren't controlled allow black to drop pieces, getting stuff in hand on the board and block off threats. So the problem with this is that this square and this square are both defended, so black can drop pieces along this row, and this king is suddenly out of the attack. So yeah, the move here was actually something like this. If you takes back, we're continuing our attack. There's no immediate mate threat, and black's getting mated. If you try and hold on to your bishop, then you can't, apparently. Bishop takes g6, h takes, queen takes. So I can't see the continuation. Queen takes knight. Black has enough in hand, apparently, to finish this game off. Knight g8, king f7, rook at g7, king f8, at e7, king e8, knight f6, checkmate. Okay, so there is enough apparently in hand, which is very believable, to finish this off. So instead, black suddenly gets a lot of pieces on the board. This is actually the position of a puzzle. After this position here, black to play. But I'm just going to show you the move. The move is bishop at f3. It's a really brilliant move, and it stops the threat of rook at h5. If you do nothing, the problem is rook at h5. So in fact, if you do e7 as happened in the game, there's rook at h5, takes, queen takes, checkmate. That move was missed, but a brilliant defensive resource is bishop f3, because it both attacks and defends. And the point of it is if you take the bishop, for example, we have knight takes, bishop d3 check, blocks, bishop takes pawn. We actually have this knight at g3 and a smothered mate idea. We have a second knight, so even though you can take this, takes, no, yes. What's going on here? Oh, queen takes f3 is good. Sorry, I thought... Sorry, queen takes f3 is a good move. What was I thinking? Queen takes f3, knight takes f3. I thought we had enough for a smothered mate, but we don't. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up. So takes here. If knight at g3, it's just you have to step carefully. If you take here, you get mated, so you have to take this way. If this way you don't take with the rook, or you get mated, so you take this way. But there is nothing, apparently. Okay, yeah, there is nothing here. So white is safe, sorry. So queen takes f3 is strong. Sorry about that. Queen takes f3 is strong. What's not strong is g takes f3. Yeah. So even though we only have knights in hand, knights are enough to checkmate the king. Several knights and a pawn are enough to checkmate the king. If the king steps back, just pawn at g2 is checkmate. So that's why this bishop at f3 is quite challenging. Also, rook at g3 is a very strong move, just defending g2 and continuing the attack. But what was played in the game was e7, and now, as I showed, white just has a mate in 2, but instead went for a check. And again, this is checks along diagonals and rows and files that allows black to put in more and more defenders, so it was a bit of a mistake. Takes, and white's getting quite a lot of material, so white is on the verge of getting mated, but he's getting a bit more material on the board. Rook at g3 check, yeah, maybe rook at g1. Rook g1 check was strong. If you take with the knight, we're just getting another knight in hand. So you try and evade. Rook here, rook takes bishop, bishop here. There were lots of mates, but they're not short mates, and so they were easy to miss. Rook at g3, king h4. White is still mating. Rook takes knight, king takes rook. At g2, king h4 at g3. g4, king takes g4, knight here, check, king h4. White's a little bit out of material, but you can always pick up more material. So bishop takes pawn here, bishop takes pawn, pawn takes. Notice the bishop's always cutting off the king. Queen takes, king h4, and at g3, for example, the knight cutting off the king would have been. But you have to, so I guess the one thing that Darubara was not noticing are these double take mates. So if we go back to this position here, when he had after this, the double take mate, I'd say, is something that Darubara needs to recognize. And again here, the double take mate, because you take here, takes well, here it's not so clear, but even here, it was actually a bit later. G4 takes, knight here, and you have now a double take mate on G6. New pawn. So yeah, instead he used G4. Okay, it's still mating, but now this pawn is, you need the knight to defend this pawn. Okay, now that pawn can get knight f3, knight takes f3, queen takes f3. Okay, so suddenly it's not black is not in check, but there are no threats on the white king. And what's the threat? It's not completely clear. It's knight here. Knight at g2 is checkmate. Yes, that's the threat. So pawn at h3 was played to defend knight at g2 checkmate, but it doesn't defend queen g3 checkmate. So that would be game over. Queen g3 checkmate. But Darubara missed that and played knight at g1, going for queen takes h3 checkmate. At g2 was played, and suddenly that move, knight at g1, just took away the luft from the white king, and suddenly white is losing his queen, and after knight f4, white resigned. And the reason he resigned is because if he goes back, queen at g2 is checkmate. If he comes out, he probably should have played this through just to force Mohar to find the mate. The knight covers the escape back. You'd have to go here. Knight d5 checks, a double check. So the king can't go back to d2, but it could go back to e2. But remember, we have a queen in hand, so that's just okay, quite easy. And if he goes to d4, there's knight at c6 check, king c5, queen at b4. But given all the missed mates for white, I think white should have played on to force Mohar to play out the mate. Okay, we didn't get as far as we intended. Like we only did 4 chapters instead of 8. I was going to do 104 chapters. Yeah, that's not realistic. So we did 4 chapters, and we have 100 chapters to go in part 3 next time. But well, hope you enjoyed the short stream, and hopefully I do the next one at a more popular time. Maybe we should end, as this is a puzzle stream, with a puzzle. So maybe this is like a teaser for next time. So we've covered up so this is black to play, and this is a mate that Rapid Variants found against the finisher. So I'm going to just have a little think for myself. In the last few minutes of the stream, I'm just going to leave this puzzle as a teaser. Thanks, Fish K, in the comments. Yeah, I do realise Sunday mornings are not the ideal time. America has gone to sleep, and Europe, and normally myself would not have woken up yet. But I basically slept most of yesterday, so was motivated to do something this morning. Okay, so can people see the mate here? I'm just going to leave it for a few more moments as I try and figure it out myself. Yeah, I think I'm seeing something. Yeah. I think we're going to do this next time. And we'll continue with the remaining 100 chapters of this dual study from highlights from Season 6 of the Crazyhouse League. If you're interested in the Crazyhouse League, at the moment we're engaged in Crazyhouse 960 League, which is actually being played on pychess.org. If you check out my YouTube, you can see some of the action from that. If you check out my playlist, you can see a playlist of all the Crazyhouse 960 action. Also, you can see a playlist of the other Crazyhouse League videos. Fishk says maybe some kind of knight at h3 check stuff. Yes, okay. Knight at h3 check looks very promising indeed. Because of the weakness on f2. Yep, you're spot on. I'm not going to show the. I'll show the line next time and continue with the analysis. Thanks everyone for joining, and till next time.